I remember the summer of 1993 like it was yesterday. My friends and I were about to start our last year of high school and we were on top of the world. Nearly all of us had been gamers who had wasted countless hours in Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat. The arcade scene was dwindling even then, and mainly what was left were fighting games and the odd sit-down units. Lucky for us, the local bowling alley still had a small arcade room that it kept updated with the newest releases. And you can imagine the utter jubilation when we strolled in and saw they had Mortal Kombat 2 one fateful summer day. To say we were excited was an understatement. Midway had taken all the gore from the original release and added so much more. There were now 12 fighters, more fatalities, more secrets, faster gameplay, and you even had the choice to spare your opponent with a friendship or humiliate them further with a babality. There was no question this was a massive improvement in every way. Visually, the sequel here seemed more colorful and the environments more menacing. Gameplay seemed tighter, allowing for more combo possibilities. The two big bad guys came off much more threatening and presented a vicious challenge to all who opposed them. We dumped countless quarters into that cabinet, learning its secrets and trying to see the ending for every single fighter. For months we practically lived in that little arcade room, trading intel with the other kids that would wander in, making sure we found even the smallest bits of content. Mortal Kombat 2 had dominated our summer, and we enjoyed every second of it. We were so stoked for the home ports, we could hardly wait. And in this episode, we are gonna see how it fared on Sega's 32X. Could the new 32-bit system do it justice, or did Acclaim crap the bed, leaving us wanting more? Let's find out. Before we jump into the 32X release, it's important that we cover the Genesis edition a little bit. Originally released in September of 1994, this port was developed by Probe, who had also done the Genesis version of the first game. It was well received upon its release, with most media outlets at the time praising its gameplay. It even looked fairly solid for the Genesis, considering the digitized assets needed to be pared back heavily for the lower color palette. But where this version fell flat on its face was its sound and music. Oh man, was it a disaster. This one came in at 24 megabits, which was no small thing back then, but even at that size, numerous voice samples and sound effects were completely cut from the game. The soundtrack was also radically different. Matt Furness returned to do the music here, but with the Super Nintendo edition sticking so close to the arcade, the changes made to the Genesis were much more jarring. This negatively impacted its faithfulness to the arcade, leading to a number of publications proclaiming the Super Nintendo version the one to own. Make no mistake, this one title had a profound effect on the North American market. Gone were the days of the Nintendo version being scrubbed clean of blood and extreme gore. This left the Genesis to stand toe-to-toe with its competition on the merits of gameplay, graphics, and sound, areas where the older Genesis hardware needed extra care. Instead of making this a full 32 megabit experience with all the voices and sound effects present, Acclaim left many Sega fans wanting more. And the thing is, it's not like the sales wouldn't have warranted the extra space. This series sold millions of copies on the Genesis, besting even Capcom's Street Fighter II titles by quite a stretch. A more faithful sounding edition of Mortal Kombat 2 would have lessened its critique in the media, and likely led to even better sales. Among my friends who were diehard fans, it wasn't even close. Every single one of them preferred the Super Nintendo version. Finish it. Oh.
Scorpion wins. Fatality. Finish him.
After the release of the 16-bit editions of Mortal Kombat 2, all of our attention switched over to the coming 32X port. With the 32X rendering Doom, Star Wars Arcade, and Virtua Racing Deluxe, I felt for sure it could easily handle a near-perfect port of this two-dimensional game without many concessions at all. And content-wise, it did a great job of giving you what you had in the arcade. Probe chose to base this version on the Genesis release, so the gameplay was really fast and it only took a few matches to adjust your arcade combos to the new feel. Your hidden characters and main cast of fighters were all here, including all their moves and finishes. The arcade mode included your typical rundown of contestants before getting to Kentaro and Shao Kahn, the two main bad guys. The two-player mode is here, though it's short on features from there. Probe stuck to the original Midway blueprint pretty much to a T, and honestly, that was a good thing. There is no question that this plays significantly better than the original game, and you know that from the first second you start moving the fighter around the screen. The AI even has the same patterns and falls for the same tricks it did in the arcade. Pound for pound, there is nothing about this gameplay to complain about. It's fast, responsive, and true to the source. From that perspective, this port was a resounding success.
Finish him. Scorpion wins. Fatality.
With Probe using the Genesis version as a base for this, any chance of arcade-perfect graphics were immediately lost. And man, what a letdown this was when I first saw it. The way this works is fairly simple. The Genesis renders the backgrounds, and the 32X does the fighters and shadows. The end results are a better-looking Mortal Kombat 2, but one that is nowhere near arcade-perfect. The fighters are smaller and missing animation frames. The backgrounds are less detailed. The entire scene still feels like it's missing a load of color, right down to everything going dark for the fatalities. Acclaim and/or Probe clearly wanted a quick and easy job with this, and it shows in everything you see. The fighter portraits, the toasty guy, the opening cinematics, it all feels rushed and done for a quick buck. There is no question it's better than the original Genesis release in most regards. Side by side, you get a much better looking presentation all the way around, but that's only when you compare it to the Genesis. When you drop in the Super Nintendo version, these improvements look so much less impressive, and that's a huge reason why this edition was skewered by many of the gaming magazines. The same publications that had rated the Genesis port well, in turn crushed the 32X edition for being much less impressive than it should have been. In fact, some even went so far as to poke fun at the 32X edition, saying that all Sega fans had to do was shell out another $220 to get a game Nintendo fans had already had for months. Heck, even the Genesis color hacks don't look so bad next to it. Time has tempered my disappointment with the visuals of this, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't expecting much more when I first saw it.
Round one, fight. Round one, fight. Round one, fight. One fight.
The one area where the Genesis port had really let me down was the sound department. It was missing so much, and what was there just didn't come off nearly as well as it had on the Super Nintendo. Fortunately, this is one area where Probe put some actual work into the 32X version. While it's still missing some of the smaller sound effects, most of the voice work is back, and many of the other effects have been completely redone to fall more in line with expectations. Raiden's lightning pose sounds so much better. Death screams are so much more satisfying, and hearing Shao Kahn complete a stage made things feel so much more authentic. I was so happy from a sound effects standpoint that the return of the bog standard Genesis music didn't bother me at all. Let's have a listen to a few matches and see how it fares.
Finish him. Finish him. Win. Outstanding. Finish him. Scorpion wins. Fatality.
I'm not gonna lie, this one pulls me in all sorts of different directions when I think about it. Part of me looks at it with today's eyes, enjoying it for what it is, a solid console port that played great. But part of me wants you to know what a 19-year-old Sega Lord X felt way back when. He was disappointed. He wanted something much closer to the arcade. He knew the 32X could do better, and Acclaim simply upgraded the Genesis 16-bit version and slapped a $70 price tag on it. Yes, this game was $69.99 at its North American launch. To put that in perspective, that's like buying a modern game for $134, a ridiculous amount for a title that was nowhere near as good as the original arcade's presentation. And that right there is where the split of opinion is going to occur for almost all of you. If, like me, you purchased this for its original price tag expecting the arcade at home, those expectations are likely to still hurt and affect your opinion today. Should you have played this one at a later date, avoiding its ludicrous MSRP and the expectations associated with it, you probably have a more favorable opinion. For what it's worth, the 32X version of Mortal Kombat 2 plays great, and among those original ports that didn't involve emulation, it's my favorite. It looks better than the Genesis and Super Nintendo editions, and plays better than both the Saturn and PlayStation versions. If I didn't have that initial need to see the 32X replicate the arcade visually, this likely would have knocked my socks off.
Kitana wins. Babality. Finish him. Kitana wins. Friendship. Finish him. Shang Tsung wins. Fatality. Finish her. Shang Tsung wins. Fatality.
So where does that leave the 32X Mortal Kombat? Is it worth playing today? As far as something you can drop on original hardware and get the most out of it, I do recommend playing this. It bests both the Genesis and Super Nintendo versions, and even though the Saturn and PlayStation releases look better, neither of them play as well. That means to get a better Mortal Kombat 2 experience, you need to go straight to the arcade or something that can accurately emulate it. But there is no doubt this one is still tied to the negative legacy of the 32X. It was a quick and dirty port that upgraded what we had already seen on the Genesis. That was certainly not worth $70, nor did it earn the right to be called a true 32-bit fighter. This kind of thing actually dogged the 32X its entire life. 16-bit games being upgraded at a premium asking price. Nearly all of its third parties were guilty of it, including Sega themselves. This is perhaps the biggest letdown about the device. It always left you wondering, what could have been accomplished had the games been developed from the ground up to use what the 32X was really capable of? In Mortal Kombat 2, could we have gotten arcade-sized sprites? Could we have gotten an arcade-accurate soundtrack? Could those backgrounds have been even better? Now, nearly 30 years later, I often still wonder about these questions and what could have been on Sega's mushroom-shaped accelerator. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.